It was a Tuesday, my 43rd birthday. I was sitting in my office, staring out the window at nothing in particular, just the gray clouds crawling across the sky like they were dragging some bad omen behind them. Funny how the weather sometimes knows before we do. I came home to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that wraps itself around your neck and squeezes. The kind that makes your gut instinct whisper, brace yourself. My wife, Marissa, stood in the foyer. Not a smile. No happy birthday, no dinner, no kids waiting to jump out with cake. Just her, dressed like she was heading to court or a funeral. Turns out, it was both. I need you to sign these, she said flatly, handing me a thick stack of papers. I blinked. What is this? She didn't even look at me. Divorce papers. My heart didn't drop, it slammed. But I didn't let it show. Not yet. After 14 years of marriage, after birthdays spent cleaning up kid puke or fixing the furnace at midnight, after all the little sacrifices that never got seen, this was the thank you card I got. I flipped through the pages in a daze. Custody? Full. Property? Hers. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, mine in name only. All of it, gone with the swipe of a pen and a judge's signature. And then she laughed. Laughed. The judge awarded me everything you have, she said with that same smirk she used when she'd win an argument over nothing, like where the dish towels belonged. I used to think it was cute. Now it looked venomous. I set the papers down without saying a word. My throat was dry. My hands, steady. I think that scared her more than if I'd screamed. Then came the second blow, my children. Olivia and Mason. My 2 kids. I used to tuck them in every night with stupid voices and bedtime stories I made up on the fly. Mason still had the comic book I drew for him when he broke his arm in 3rd grade. Olivia cried into my shoulder the night her hamster died. My babies. Now they stood on the staircase, looking down like I was a stranger. Marissa must have rehearsed this with them. You can stop calling us, Olivia said, arms crossed, mouth tight. Mason didn't even look at me. We're legally changing our last names. I looked at them both. And I nodded. I didn't beg. Didn't ask why. What was the point? They'd already burned the bridge. No sense standing on it waiting to fall through. That night, I packed a bag. I left the house I built with my own damn hands. I didn't take the truck. I left the dog, too. It wasn't his fault. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked away. They moved fast. Within a week of serving me papers, Marissa and the kids, no, not my kids anymore, just hers, relocated to a sprawling 6-bedroom mansion outside of town. Gated drive. Infinity pool. A 3-car garage filled with machines I'd never owned and never would. Apparently, she'd been in talks to buy it for months, behind my back. Bought it cash. Funny how tight money always was when I needed a new suit for work or asked about replacing our broken dryer. I heard about the move through my lawyer, Sharon. She told me in that calm, measured tone of hers, the one that says, brace yourself. It's about to hurt, but I've got a scalpel, not a hammer. They celebrated last night, she said. Popped champagne. You were the toast. I nodded slowly. She still thinks she won? Sharon smiled slightly. Let her. A week after they moved in, while they were throwing what I can only assume was a housewarming party for their new kingdom built on betrayal, Sharon delivered the envelope. It wasn't bulky. Just a few sheets of paper. White. Clean. But it carried weight, more than any divorce decree Marissa had shoved in my face. See, I'd been quiet for a reason. I didn't fight the divorce. I didn't scream about the kids turning on me. I didn't even flinch when they said they were changing their last names. That was calculated. Because 10 years ago, I set something in motion. A project. A company. Something I started in a 1-bedroom rental when I was working overtime and pulling double shifts, scribbling ideas on napkins during midnight breaks. No one believed in it. Not even Marissa. She called it my sandbox startup. But I kept at it. Filed the patents in my name only. Registered the LLC with my brother as silent co-founder. I never used our home address. Never mixed it with marital finances. Sharon made sure of that. She saw what Marissa never did, the potential. And last month, that company got bought out by a global firm for just under $38 million. Marissa didn't know. Neither did the kids. I had kept every bit of it hidden, protected under layers of legal insulation. Until now. The envelope included the sale confirmation, the trust breakdown, and one final note, written by hand. You walked away. Now so will I. 3 hours after Sharon delivered it, my phone rang. It was Olivia. First time I'd heard her voice since she told me to stop calling. She wasn't calm anymore. She was sobbing. How could you hide this from us? After 10 years. There it was, the truth bleeding through the cracks. The fear. The panic. Not over losing me. No, that would have been human. It was over the money. Over what they thought was theirs. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, steady as bedrock, you made your choice. Now live with it. Click. The place I moved into wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, cracked linoleum in the kitchen. A peeling porch swing that groaned when the wind kicked up. But it was mine. No shared walls. No ghost of laughter turned to betrayal. Just a quiet, honest place where I could hear my own breathing without wondering who else was listening. There were no family portraits on the walls. No half-used shampoo bottles in the shower. No glitter glue stuck to the table from a kid's art project. Just me, a dented coffee maker, and an old couch I found on Facebook Marketplace. And for a while, that was enough. I'd wake up early, brew cheap coffee, take walks down by the lake where the water didn't ask questions. Sometimes, I'd sit on the dock for hours watching the light shift across the surface like it was trying to scrub something clean. Maybe me. But the peace was temporary. The past doesn't leave you alone just because you've stopped answering the door. Marissa started calling. Burner numbers. Blocked IDs. I never picked up. She left voicemails though, angry, then pleading, then angry again. The messages went like this. You blindsided us. You manipulated everything. You were never honest with me. With any of us. We were your family, and you let us walk away. No apology. Not once. Not even a shred of accountability. Just indignation that I hadn't played the part of the doormat like I was supposed to. Like they had all expected me to. But the real kicker came from Mason. He showed up at my door one Sunday afternoon. No warning. No text. Just stood there on my porch in some overpriced hoodie, arms folded like he was there to lecture me. You really gonna keep that money from us? He said. Us. Like we were still a we. I leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. You mean the man who doesn't share your last name anymore? The one you told to stop calling? His jaw twitched. It's not like that. No, I said. It's exactly like that. You could at least help us with school, with the house. Mom's been stressed. She wasn't stressed cashing the check from her new husband's offshore account, was she? He looked stunned. Yeah, I knew about that too. Mason stared at me for a long second. Then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from him, he asked, why didn't you tell us? I almost laughed. Because telling you would have made it ours. And you made it clear, I'm not part of your ours anymore. I closed the door. Slow. Deliberate. Then I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Because the thing about silence, the kind that chokes, is that if you learn to breathe through it, it becomes armor. You ever watch a ship sink in slow motion? That was Marissa's mansion. It started small, little things, like a lien on the property over an unpaid contractor, a furniture vendor suing for a canceled order, a landscaping company that stopped showing up when the checks bounced. The woman who once scheduled spa weekends like clockwork was now calling my lawyer to negotiate. I told Sharon to let her talk, to listen, document, and forward everything to my inbox with no reply. See, Marissa never really understood money. Not how it works. Not how it's kept. She knew how to spend it, sure. Flash it around. Use it as a weapon. But build it? Maintain it? That took patience, discipline, strategy. All the things she mistook for weakness. After the sale of my company, I didn't spend a dime. Not on cars, not on a new place. I paid off my remaining debts, moved the rest into a trust, and set up shell companies to funnel my investments. Quiet. Legal. Watertight. Meanwhile, Marissa was still living like the judge's ruling came with an unlimited credit card. She filed appeals when the trust terms hit her desk. Claimed hidden assets, marital deception, tried to tie the business to the marriage through every stretch of logic imaginable. But there was one problem: timing. My company was founded 2 years before we even got married. She never touched it. Never invested. Never signed. It was cleaner than a preacher's Bible. And once that was established, the hammer dropped. Her lawyers bailed. Couldn't prove fraud where there was none. Her third mortgage fell through when the bank realized her net worth was paper thin and the collateral was collapsing in value. The mansion? Listed for auction. And just to twist the knife, I sent Mason a real estate flyer in the mail. Open house, former residence of distinction. I didn't sign it. I didn't have to. 2 weeks later, I heard Marissa had moved into a condo on the other side of town. One of those places that looks modern on the surface but reeks of desperation. Chrome fixtures, fake granite, and an HOA president who thinks he's royalty, because he once met a senator at a fundraising dinner. The kids didn't follow her. Olivia had dropped out of college, blamed emotional trauma, but I saw the pictures. Pool parties, rooftop shots with overpriced wine, and guys who wore sunglasses indoors. Mason tried to launch a brand online. Motivational junk. T-shirts with his own quotes printed in gold cursive. They wanted the benefits of my name, without the weight of it. I gave them neither. And then, just when the dust started to settle, Olivia called again. Crying this time. He left, Dad. The guy Mom married. He took what was left of her savings and vanished. There's nothing left. I didn't respond. She sniffled. Can I come stay with you for a while? There it was. The real test. I paused. Let the silence stretch. Then, no. Another pause. I could hear the storm breaking inside her. Are you serious? I'm your daughter. No, I said quietly. You were. But when I needed a daughter, you were a spectator. But I didn't know. You didn't ask. I hung up. And for the first time, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Freedom's a funny thing. It doesn't come with fireworks or parades. No trumpet sounds. No dramatic monologue in the ring. It's just quiet. The kind that settles in your bones after years of noise. I used to think being a good man meant being a provider. A protector. The guy who takes the hits and keeps his mouth shut. The guy who makes the hard calls while everyone else critiques the menu. 14 years of that. 14 years of carrying a house full of ungrateful people on my shoulders like it was my calling. Turns out, I was building a temple on sand. But once the storm tore it down, I got to build something better, with concrete, steel, and no damn passengers. I started a new project. A real one. A software platform built on the original bones of the company I sold. But this time, it wouldn't get buried behind legal armor. This time, it was mine, not a legacy, not a retirement plan. Just a damn good product with a bulletproof foundation. I worked out of my rental for a while. Laptop on the floor, half-empty coffee cup nearby. Jazz playing low on an old Bluetooth speaker. No board meetings. No distractions. Just the rhythm of creation. By the end of month 2, I had an MVP, a minimum viable product for the uninitiated, and a few calls lined up with VC firms that didn't care where I lived or who I used to be married to. They just wanted results. And results? I delivered. Meanwhile, word got around town. People whispered about the man who gave up everything and came out richer than before. Some said I was lucky. Some said I was ruthless. But those who really paid attention, they called me smart. And then Marissa made her next move. Apparently, living in a cheap condo wasn't glamorous enough for her. She started calling around, looking for sympathy. Claimed I'd abandoned the family. That I tricked the court. That I was sitting on millions while our poor children struggled. One of her friends even showed up at my door. Nice woman. Wore grief like it was perfume. You know, she started. Whatever happened between you and Marissa? Olivia and Mason didn't deserve this. I let her talk. Nodded politely. Then I handed her an envelope. Inside were copies of the emails. The texts. The screenshots of messages from Olivia and Mason. The ones where they mocked me, dismissed me, ghosted me after Marissa won. You'll find they made their choices, I said, cool and even. Just like I made mine. She blinked, lips parted. Still, they're your family. No, I replied. They were my dependents. And dependents don't get to dictate the terms of the provider's downfall. She left in silence, maybe rethinking her loyalties. Good. But not everyone stayed gone. Because 2 weeks later, Mason came back. Not with a plea. Not with remorse. With a proposition. He showed up like he owned the place. Mason always had that swagger, shoulders back, chin up, eyes just shy of arrogant. Except now, the cockiness was wearing thin. The hoodie was wrinkled, his sneakers beat up, and there was a jitter in his hands he couldn't hide. Nerves, probably. Or guilt pretending to be confidence. Got a minute? He asked like we were old buddies. I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting him in. You lost. He gave a forced chuckle. Come on, Dad. Dad. That word used to mean something. Used to come laced with trust, warmth, that unspoken connection between protector and son. Now it sounded like a trick, a lead into a pitch. I heard you've got something big going, he said, slipping his hands into his pockets. This new company. Word gets around. I raised an eyebrow. Does it? I've been working on some ideas myself, he continued. Like I hadn't spent a year watching him chase social media clout and motivational nonsense like a dog chasing its own tail. Branding, audience growth, digital monetization, the usual stuff. The usual stuff. Mason speak for I googled a few terms and made a Canva account. And I asked, keeping my face unreadable. He looked around, as if the right words were hidden behind my porch light. Well, I figured maybe. We team up. You've got the tech. I've got the marketing mind. We could make something huge together. A legacy. I laughed. Not a belly laugh. Just a dry, clipped sound. Enough to sting. You want a seat at the table, I said. I want to build the table, he insisted. You burned it. He paused. Swallowed. I was just caught up. Mom was convincing. Olivia too. We thought. No, I cut in. You chose. You don't get to rewrite it now that your golden goose flew the coop. He shifted his weight. I made mistakes. You made decisions. He nodded, trying to look mature. I just think you owe me a shot. There it was. That single, arrogant sentence. You owe me. I stepped forward, closer now, just enough for my voice to drop low and land hard. I owed you when you were a child. When you scraped your knees and I carried you home. When I gave up promotions to be there for your games, your school, your future. I owed you when you were mine. But the moment you looked me in the face and said, stop calling us, the tab closed. And brother, you paid the bill in full. He looked like I'd slapped him. And maybe in a way, I had. I'm not angry, I added. That would imply I still care what you think. Then I nodded toward the sidewalk. Now to your walk of shame like a man. You're good at exits. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally turned and walked away. Didn't even look back. Good. Because some bridges don't need rebuilding. They need to be left in ashes, so you never forget the fire. It was a Thursday night when I got the message. Simple. Unexpected. Hey, been a while. Heard your name again. Not from your family, don't worry. Just wondered if you're still you. Elena. Elena Hayes. That name used to be lightning in my chest. The kind that crackles warm and dangerous just before a storm rolls in. We met before Marissa, before the suits, the mortgages, and the invisible weight of obligation settled onto my shoulders like a curse disguised as comfort. She was the wild card in my neatly shuffled deck. Sharp tongue. Smarter than I was. Never needed rescuing, but once let me hold her just to see if I could. We dated for about a year when I was 25. Split amicably, or so I thought. I chose the stable route. Chose Marissa. And Elena? She disappeared like she knew how it would end. I stared at the message for a solid minute. Still me? Not sure I even knew the answer anymore. I wrote back. Still me. A little more scar tissue. You. Her reply was almost instant. Same. Less polite. You free for a coffee? Or something stronger? We met at a quiet place near the harbor. One of those dimly lit cafes where you can hear your own thoughts and the chairs don't match on purpose. She looked the same, only sharpened, like time had traded softness for clarity. The kind of beautiful that doesn't try. The kind that doesn't apologize. We talked. About everything and nothing. About the years we'd missed and the things we couldn't say back then. She never married. Got close once, but pulled the ripcord before impact. Built a small business from scratch. Traveled alone. Lived on her own terms. You always chased stability, she said, sipping her drink. I chased freedom. Neither one's perfect. Mine definitely wasn't, I said, smiling over the rim of my glass. She tilted her head. I heard. I nodded slowly. Let me guess. Marissa's friends. No. Mason. That stopped me. Elena, how do you know Mason? I volunteer at the youth center he tried to pitch a sponsorship idea to. Thought his name would open doors. Dropped your name like it was a magic word. I laughed, shaking my head. Still thinks the world owes him a shortcut. I told him names don't mean much when the man behind it doesn't show up. I looked at her, and something in my chest shifted. It wasn't romantic. Not exactly. It was respect. Something rare. Something I'd forgotten existed between men and women when there's no manipulation, no power plays, no scoreboard. Just mutual history, and maybe something more if you want it. You want to walk for a bit? She asked. I did. We walked the shoreline in silence. Wind off the water. The occasional honk from a distant boat. My thoughts, for once, weren't circling like vultures. I liked you back then, she said, finally. But you were too busy trying to be what everyone needed. You didn't know what you needed. I stopped walking. And she looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. You know now. I didn't speak. Just nodded. Because I did. And that changed everything. She called late. Not out of desperation. Marissa never did anything without rehearsing it first. This wasn't a cry for help. This was a performance. Do you have a minute? She asked, her voice all sugar and string. I didn't answer. Just waited. She took the silence as permission. Classic Marissa. Still mistaking silence for submission. I wanted to talk. That's all. Talk. The woman who laughed when I was served divorce papers. Who smirked in court like she was cashing a check. Who coached our children into contempt with the precision of a political campaign. Now she wanted to talk. I miss the way things used to be, she said. Back when we were, you know us. I almost laughed. Almost. But I let her keep going. I wanted to hear what desperation looked like when it wore mascara and old perfume. The mansion wasn't what I thought it would be, she confessed. Too quiet. Too cold. I miss our old house. The way the floors creaked in the hallway. The way your coffee always smelled in the morning. Her voice trailed off like she thought nostalgia might buy her a second act. You miss the coffee? I said, finally. She exhaled, relieved I'd spoken. I miss you. No, I said, voice calm. You miss the man who paid for everything. The one who answered your calls. Who held your hand in public, so everyone knew you were chosen. You don't miss me. You miss the status. That's not fair. Fair left the conversation when you weaponized our kids. I didn't mean. You meant every second of it. You thought you could strip me of everything and still walk away the hero. Silence. I imagined her sitting there. In some overpriced chair she couldn't return. Surrounded by furniture she once showed off. Now watching her with the cold indifference of inanimate objects. I thought maybe we could start over, she said, voice cracking now. There it was. The real ask. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Relevance. Marissa was never afraid of losing love. She was afraid of losing the spotlight. And now, she was fading. I stood by the window, watching the rain hit the pavement in sharp diagonal lines. The kind of storm that washes the world clean if you let it. Marissa, I said quietly, you can repaint a house, polish the windows, replace the floors, but if the foundation's cracked, it'll never be home again. Her voice broke. I didn't think you'd stop caring. That's your problem, I said, voice hardening. You thought I never would. I hung up. No anger. No venom. Just a clean cut. Like cutting the last thread from a frayed suit that no longer fits. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I slept like a man with no ghosts in his bed. It arrived on a Tuesday. A plain white envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Olivia's. Neat, practiced, like everything she did. A page and a half folded inside, scented faintly with the perfume she used to wear in high school. It used to remind me of innocence. Now it just smelled like a ghost. Dad, I don't know if you'll even read this, but I'm writing anyway. I owe you more than silence. I owe you the truth, or at least what I understand of it now. I've been wrong. About you. About everything. Mom told me stories. Said you hid money. Said you didn't care. Said you were cruel when the cameras were off. But Mason told me what happened. What you said. What you did for us, even when we pushed you out. And I realized something. I never gave you the chance to be anything other than what she claimed you were. I want to understand. Please, just tell me who you really were during all of it. Not the man in court. Not the man in the mansion we stole. Just the man behind the silence. Olivia. I sat with that letter for a long time. Turned it over. Reread the smudged line near the bottom where the ink had blurred. Maybe a tear, maybe just her pen giving out. Either way, it left a mark. And I wrote her back. Olivia, you want the truth? Here it is. I was the man who stayed up late figuring out how to afford both your braces and the mortgage after your mother overspent on a business trip that was really just Vegas and vodka. I was the one who skipped out on promotions because I didn't want to miss your dance recitals, even when you didn't see me in the back row. I was the man who stayed when things got ugly, who held the line when your mother made me the villain, who absorbed every insult like it was part of the job description. I was the fool who thought love was enough. That if I worked hard, stayed loyal, and kept giving, eventually someone would see me. You didn't. You believed her lies because they were easier. Easier than asking questions. Easier than seeing me for who I really was. Because seeing me would have meant admitting she was the one swinging the blade while I was bleeding out quietly in the kitchen. But I get it now. You were young. Confused. Manipulated. Maybe scared. Still, I'm not here to rescue you. That window closed the day you said I was no longer your father. You're grown now. You get to carry that choice. But here's something I'll give you anyway: truth without bitterness, clarity without obligation. I loved you. Once, fiercely. And maybe somewhere in the cracks of that broken bond, some small part of me still does. But love without respect is pity. And I won't be pitted. Dad. I mailed it the next day. No return address. No expectation. Just closure. Funny how death shows up when life finally starts to feel light. The call came in the middle of a Tuesday. Seems fate likes its patterns. My Uncle Harold, my dad's brother, had passed. Quietly. Peacefully. In his sleep, they said. He'd always been a reserved man, not much for holidays or handshakes, but sharp as a blade. The kind of guy who remembered birthdays and people's shoe sizes, even if he never called to say happy birthday or bought you shoes. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. Not because of bad blood, just life. After the divorce, I figured that side of the family wrote me off along with the rest. Turns out, Harold didn't. At the reading of the will, it was just me, the lawyer, and a brittle silence held together by manila folders. No other relatives had been listed. No old friends. No dusty trust fund parasites. Just me. To my nephew, the lawyer read aloud, who was always more of a son than the boy I never had. I watched you endure betrayal with more grace than I ever would have managed. I figured you might need one last card to play. He paused, looked up, slid a folder across the table. Inside? Photos. Letters. Signed documents. Proof that the business trip Marissa took to Vegas 3 years before our divorce wasn't just a spa retreat. It was an affair. With her caterer. The same man she once insisted was like family. There were receipts, hotel logs, emails, even a handwritten note from her begging Harold to keep it quiet if he ever found out. He had. And instead of confronting her, he waited, watched, documented, and left it for me. I thought about mailing this to you when it happened, the will continued, but I figured you wouldn't believe it until you were ready. You're ready now. The lawyer folded his hands. What would you like to do with it? I stared down at the pile. A small bomb of truth. Burn it? Maybe. Publish it? Tempting. Send it to Olivia and Mason with a handwritten, "I told you so"? Satisfying, but beneath me. No. I took a deep breath, slid it all back into the folder, and tucked it under my arm. This never goes public, I said. The lawyer nodded. Understood. Because justice wasn't always about headlines. Sometimes it's just knowing. Knowing that the lies they fed the world could crumble in an instant if I chose to snap my fingers. That their reputation, their carefully curated web of denial, was hanging by a single thread I now owned. Power isn't about revenge. It's about restraint. And knowing I'd never need to use it, because they'd always wonder if I would. It was late October. One of those crisp mornings where the world smells like burnt leaves and forgotten promises. I was in the garage, tinkering with an old watch I'd meant to fix years ago, when I heard it. 3 knocks. Not urgent. Not timid either. Just deliberate. I opened the door to find a kid standing there. Couldn't have been older than 18. Skinny. Nervous. Hair too long for a job interview, too short for rebellion. His hands were stuffed deep into his hoodie pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. He looked like he hadn't slept. You're Nathaniel? He asked, his voice cracking. Yeah. He swallowed. I think you knew my mom. I stared at him. My mind started sorting through memories like a Rolodex lit on fire. Your name? Cameron. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a folded letter, creased like it had been read 100 times. He held it out to me like it was radioactive. It's from her. I took it. Unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. Marissa. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone or too much of a coward to explain myself. Cameron is my son. Yours, too. I never told you because I was afraid it would ruin everything. You had just started your company, and we were still figuring us out. I didn't want to derail your plans. When you proposed to me, I made a choice. I married you but left that chapter closed. I told everyone Cameron was from a mistake, a relationship before you. I paid to keep him out of sight. His aunt raised him in Oregon. I'm sorry. He deserves better now. He deserves truth. The letter slid from my fingers like it was coated in oil. I stared at the kid. My son. If what she wrote was true, and God, it felt too detailed not to be. He was born the same year I founded the company. Meaning while I was struggling through 18-hour days and drinking burnt coffee at midnight, he was out there, growing up in someone else's house. And Marissa had known. She chose to bury him like a bad memory. I didn't know where else to go, Cameron said quietly. I found the letter after she left. I Googled your name. Saw the business stuff. Found your address through a forum. Smart kid. Scared. I didn't say anything for a long time. Just looked at him. Really looked. He had my eyes. And he looked nothing like Mason. No wonder she hit him. Finally, I stepped back and opened the door wider. You hungry? I asked. He blinked. What? You came all this way. Might as well eat. He nodded. Yeah. Yeah. We sat at the kitchen table, two strangers tied together by one woman's cowardice. I made eggs. He barely touched them. I didn't push. By the time he left that night, heading back to his borrowed room in a shared apartment, I gave him my number. And a promise. Next time, you don't knock. You just come in. Because even if I wasn't there when he needed me as a child, I'd be damned if I missed my shot now. It didn't take long. News spreads faster when guilt's already stirring the pot. A week after Cameron first visited, Olivia showed up on my doorstep, followed by Mason, as if they were trying to stage some kind of united front. No warning. No calls. Just the sound of a BMW pulling up too fast in my gravel driveway. I didn't invite them in. They stepped onto the porch like they owned it. Like they hadn't buried me in silence, then stood over the grave toasting their freedom. So, Olivia began, arms crossed. You have a secret, son? No greeting. No hello. No apology. Straight to accusation, like she thought that'd give her the high ground. I just leaned against the frame of the door and looked at them both. Mason's jaw was tight. Olivia's nostrils flared the way they always did when she was lying to herself. You've got some nerve showing up here, I said. Olivia stepped forward. Dada, don't call me that unless you mean it. She flinched. Not enough. Just enough. We heard about Cameron, Mason said, tone colder. What is this? You hiding kids now? Setting up a new family? I stared at him. Hard. I didn't hide him. I didn't even know he existed. Your mother did that. Their eyes darted. Neither spoke. I found out the same time you did. Maybe a minute before. But instead of storming into someone else's life demanding answers, I made him breakfast. Breakfast doesn't make up for 18 years, Mason snapped. I smiled. Slow. Cold. Neither does betrayal. That landed. You think he's going to take your place? I added. You think he's replacing you? They didn't answer. But their silence was louder than anything. Here's what was really happening. They were scared. Scared of the new variable. Scared the inheritance they once mocked might end up in someone else's hands. Scared that he might get the love they threw away. And I couldn't blame them. Because that's exactly what was happening. You two had every chance, I said. Years of it. Birthdays, holidays, Saturdays at the lake. I handed you everything, and you cashed it in for your mother's lies. We were kids, Olivia said. No, I replied, calmly. You were old enough to know better. And now you're old enough to live with it. So you're just cutting us out? Mason asked, voice sharp, but shaking beneath. No, I said. You did that. I just finally stopped holding the rope. Olivia's lip trembled. Mason's fists clenched. But I didn't flinch. Not this time. I hope you find peace, I added. But don't mistake this moment for reconciliation. This isn't a reunion. It's a reckoning. I stepped inside and closed the door.